And we are live. Hey there, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. Hello, Sundas. Thank you so much for joining us as well. Hope everyone knows you at least a little bit because you have some data engineering content. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Do you want to give a quick intro on your background, kind of who you are?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. First of all, thank you so much for having me. Good morning to people who are in Pacific time zone. Good afternoon to everybody who is in the Eastern time zone and everybody else who's joining around the world. I'm so excited to be on your channel today and talk about data engineering. A little bit about me, for those of you who follow me on various social media platforms. I talk about data science, and that's exactly my background. I currently work at Google, and I've been here for about 4 or 5 years. And before Google, I was actually at Amazon. So I've been a total in the industry about like 10 years. I started my career as a data engineer, and then I transitioned to the data scientist role. And yeah, I'm happy to share a little bit about my transition and my data engineering career and why I ended up leaving. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, I like asking everyone just because I think the problem with data or tech in general is we tend to, I don't know, get stuck in it all day. So what do you do when you're not dealing with data problems?
That's a great question. So the few ways to think about it when I'm not doing my 9 to 5. When I'm not at my 9 to 5, I'm always thinking about content. So like what content to create, what content to produce. So I'm working with my team. This year, I built my team. So it's like a legit thing for me, but it's still a side hustle, and I'm planning to keep it as like a side hustle, which is great. So when I'm not working, when I'm not doing my 9 to 5, I am actually creating content, which is started out as a hobby, but I really, really enjoy it. It really helps me disconnect from work, which is great. So that's something that I was missing earlier in my career. Besides that, so that's also working. So when I'm not doing content creation or doing my 9 to 5, you will find me, I'm based in Seattle. So Seattle is beautiful. You would know, Seattle data guy. You would know how beautiful Seattle is. So I'm like always going out on a walk. One of my favorite activities to do in the morning is make myself coffee and then go out for a walk at one of the Seattle parks. And it just really helps me clear my head and step away from my devices. And yeah, I really enjoy that. I also am into weightlifting. I love doing yoga. So, and I love trying out new food and new coffee places. So, and I have family, so I have kids. So they keep me busy. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in Seattle, you've got plenty of good food, good everything. Have you ever been to Un Bien?
Where?
Un
Muy
Bien,
bien.
if you want some
No.
great Cubano sandwiches, it's
Okay.
delicious.
Okay.
But
I'll
yeah,
add it to my list. I
maybe-
have a Google list going on, so I'll add it.
nice. So how did you get into data? Was it a pretty straight shot? What was the path there?
It was not a straight shot. I went to school, I graduated back in 2014. And back then, data science job family was like pretty new. Like a lot of people didn't know about it. And I think like the term data scientist itself was coined back in 2008. And it was 2012 when Harvard Business Review wrote that article that just made the data scientist role viral, and the data science job family all of a sudden it basically was put on a map because of that one article. So when I was in school, I did not know that data science is what I wanted to pursue. So actually I went to school for accounting because I was really good at math. And I was this is so natural to me. I got 4.0s, so that's what I'm going to do. So I got into business school. I was doing my accounting. And in school, like my advisor told me that you have to like try out different subjects because you have to like pick another minor besides your major. I ended up taking information systems class. And that class just completely blew my mind. That introduced me to databases, that it introduced me to SQL. And for me, that was the moment where I was like, this is it. This is it. Like, I want to spend more time on this, and this is what I want to do. I ended up like quitting the accounting major. I decided to like use all my extra credits that I could do outside of business school. Ended up doing at the information school. So I started taking a lot of electives in the data space. Also took online courses, and then eventually, um, I got an internship at Amazon, which was titled as financial analyst intern. And I went to this networking event at my school, and the Amazonian who was there, he was like, "You should apply to this job." I'm like, "No, I'm not interested in this job. I want to go more in the data space and more in the analytics and the science space." So that's he was like, "No, this job is like really data analytics focused. Like even though it's titled as financial analyst, you will be doing a lot of like data analysis, especially as an intern, as an entry level." And I ended up giving in my resume, and then I got the call back, did the interview, got the internship offer, which was like so cool because I had a blank resume and I was like trying really hard to like do a lot of side projects to build it. So that was like my first big job at a company like Amazon. Ended up interning, and that person was correct. It ended up being very data analysis focused. One of my projects that I worked at when I was interning was understanding customers' life journey, specifically customers who sign up for Amazon Smile program. For those who don't know, Amazon Smile was basically a donation program where you like buy anything on Amazon, and then Amazon gives like X% to your chosen donation. Sadly, it doesn't exist anymore, but it was starting out back in 2013 through 2014 when I did my internship. Ended up doing that project. Like it was clear to me, like this is my passion. This is what I want to keep doing. And how I ended up in the data engineering is the people that I used to work with. This guy who was became my mentor, eventually ended up becoming my mentor. He was a data engineer, and I would like see him. I was like, he leaves office 3 p.m. and then he goes home and he works. Like nobody cares where he is when he comes to the office, where he does his job, and whatnot. Whereas all the financial analysts would come to the office early in the morning and then leave very, very late, like 5, 6 p.m. I was like, what is that guy's job? I want that job. So ended up talking to him a lot more. And he's like, yeah, I do data engineering. Ended up learning about data engineering. And then I went back to school because my internship ended. So I went back to school, and then I ended up taking like more data engineering focused courses. And then in the same team where I was interning, they had a data engineering opening. And I applied and I interviewed and I passed. And I ended up as a data engineer. For me, I would say like the work that I did as a data engineer, I would say like 80% of it I learned on the job. And I have to give shout out to like my teammate, my mentor, the senior data engineer in at that time, like who really, really helped me and guided me. Of course, like you have to be very self-motivated and driven to learn on the job, but having the right set of people around you, like really is makes your journey a little bit easier.
Yeah, I can definitely feel the whole having to learn on the job. My guess is your MIS degree is from Foster's Business School, where mine was
Yeah.
from UW Bothell. But we both
Oh, cool.
technically have an MIS degree from UW. So
Yes.
I like same thing, right? Like you learned enough programming and database like ideas and work to be like, okay, I have the first 10% of what I need to know. And then the other 80 or 90% just comes from you learning and you having to kind of dig into things. So
Yeah.
no,
I guess like what school teaches you is how to learn. And because like regardless of which job you're in, like learning never stops. You have to learn on your own. So
yeah, especially in tech. So speaking about like things changing and having to constantly learn, since you've worked across several fangs, like you said, almost for a decade. I think we're both kind of similar in that regard as well. What has been some of like the biggest transformations you've kind of seen in the way that we work with data?
Yeah. So I would say like things have evolved quickly. Like I can answer it in several ways. I would say like data, like if I just talk about data engineering itself has evolved quite a bit. When I was data engineering, like cloud technologies were not used that much. Like it was when I was transitioning out of data engineering, that was like the moment when everybody across the industry was like transitioning to like cloud technologies, like as simple as like storing data in S3. Like back in Amazon, like Amazon used to have Oracle's database management system, and eventually there was a company mandate that you have to like transition
Yes.
everything to AWS. And there was like a
Wasn't
big migration project actually for my entire team.
was Wasn't that because like Larry Summer? No, like who's the CEO of Oracle? Like he said something along the lines of like, Amazon wouldn't be anywhere without Oracle or something because you guys were relying on it. And then Jeff Bezos was like, "All right, we're done. Like we're
I
done."
mean, Amazon has I don't know how to say it. Amazon has a big ego, but they are right. Like they're awesome. Like Amazon is great. Like they're massive. They have
Yeah.
all the technologies. Like they're doing great work. And the people that are there like really really smart. Yeah, like I'm sure like you experienced that as well. Like well, the entire industry like shifted to like cloud technology, and now there are like
Mm,
so many different technologies available that I have no clue because I have left the industry since then. So data engineering as a job family has evolved quite a bit in terms of like how you do things, and it's become more structured. Right before, like some companies had data engineers, some companies did not have a data engineer, and I think with like the recent increase in AI, like all the hype around AI, like there is more and more data that needs to be stored, that
mm,
needs to be managed. So I think because of that, like data engineering is now evolving into its own job family, becoming more structured. So I definitely see that growth to continue for the data engineering job family specifically. With respect to like the data science and data analytics, I would say like previously there was one role. When I started, like there was one role, research scientist, which is basically
mm,
your hardcore statisticians. Um, and they would do a lot of like research paper, a lot of statistical analysis. Since then to now, like 10 years later, the job family has become so structured. There are so many job families within from like research scientists that has evolved. Like there is data scientists. Now it's a different it's a whole other life like how mess up the data scientist job title is, but just let's just say data scientist generalist, and then there is product analyst, then there is data analyst, then there is data scientist research, then there's machine learning engineer, then there's AI engineer. So over the years, data science job family as a whole has become more structured and more defined. Is it perfect? No, but I think like as we keep going, like we will continue to see like more structure around different job families. Now it's a completely different topic, like in terms of like what's going to happen when the AI is like part of everybody's job. Like what are the if the data scientists are now more focused on like AI, like what are the who's going to do their job? Is it the data analyst that is going to start evolving into becoming doing the data scientist standard work? So I think we're going to continue seeing like a lot of shift in terms of like how data science job family and specific roles will continue to evolve as we like adopt AI more and more.
yeah. Yeah. It's
What are
definitely
your
been.
thoughts? Like,
I like
I'm
it.
curious, like, since you have been
Oh,
in data engineering.
yeah. I mean, I think I also really like that you called out that whole shift because it is interesting. I started out on like SQL Server and Oracle kind of data warehouses and using solutions like SSAS and a lot of like cron jobs and scripting. And then you know, I think the big shift for me in terms of like tooling was around 2015, 2016 when Airflow came out. I'm like, oh, there's another option besides me having to like manually figure out
Mhm.
everything I'm like trying to deal with like dependencies and scheduling and things of that nature. Um, but I think what I found interesting is that we tend to create the same problems over and over again. And
Yeah.
I was thinking about this recently with a lot of like some of the modern solutions that I think specifically have been targeted at like smaller and mid stack companies. So like you think you're like Estuary, Fivetran, like these a lot of like plug and play solutions that do really really well um, on like one for one job, but don't do more. But they
Mhm.
still like when I'd use them, I'd run into the same problems I would run into when I had like multiple scripts. So like, okay, they don't all talk to each other. So then I have like weird runnings of when one job runs and the next job runs and things like that. So somehow we've created the same problems. I think like what will end up happening, hopefully in the near future, is we'll consolidate all that again. or at least make it all talk to each other, all this new tooling that we've built that's supposed to be better.
Mhm.
And then have a more, I think, like streamlined approach to how we're orchestrating everything. That's more on the orchestration layer.
Mm.
I'm trying to think about other things. I think the other thing that I've found really interesting is like if you're in the cloud, what's really nice is that you can like share data easily because
Yeah.
it's all there, right? Like technically, like the only thing that separates your data from another company's data could be could be a server, but could just be essentially a line of code or a few lines of code that essentially separate your data, so to speak. And so data sharing can become easier. So I think those are the things that I'm more curious about than I am like AI. Like I think AI will be a productivity boost. I don't know in the next few years if I'll see anything that impresses me. Like I've tried to use things like AI to change my workflow, and it's like it's okay, but it's not as good as I wish it was. So I don't think in the
Yeah.
next few years I'll see it replace me. Um, yeah, I think at best it'll be a productivity boost for the next few years, and then maybe eventually it'll be able to do more system design type work, which is the real, I think, blocker right now.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm with you, and I'm so glad that you brought that up. I think people have this fear. It's the news, the media that like just publishes these very clickbaity articles saying like there was one article that was published by Forbes, I believe, which said like data analysts, job families will be replaced um, by AI, and I get it. Like I'm on YouTube, I'm a creator. Like clickbait is a thing, but like scaring people in a way, I think it's just, especially who has not used the technology, is like they won't understand. Like you and I can understand. Like we have used the technology. Yeah, I don't think it will replace any jobs anytime soon. And especially if you look at like the AI adoption in the US, and actually did I posted a video earlier today where I had to do some research. US has the lowest adoption among all the countries. India has the
Mm,
most adoption of AI. Like when you look at the different companies who are using AI day to day, US has about 35% as of
mm,
like 2024 today. And it's going to take forever for all the companies to adopt AI because there is uh, so much bad information out there. Like people need to be educated to feel comfortable using AI. And even if there is 100% adoption at some point, I believe like it's there to help you be productive. Um,
yeah.
I'm currently, we're going off tangent, but like this is such a sensitive topic for me because I'm currently onboarding to on doing a 20% project because at Google you can do like additional project if you have
Mm,
time. So I'm currently doing a 20% project, and as part of that project, I have to onboard to a new team, and I'm working on an experiment for this team. And experiment analysis is not that difficult. Like I can do it in like probably a few hours. It's figuring out where the data lives. It's figuring out like
mm,
what metrics are important. It's figuring out like the business understanding. It's figuring out like what the background is on the business, the problem, and all of that. That is taking me the most time. Like analysis, I can do it like with 10 years of experience, I can do analysis really fast. So up until AI is able to like help me solve all of that, I don't think like AI will replace my job or your job anytime soon. So
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I know it was a little off tangent, but it's good. I think it is one of those things that we all think about, and it's hard to ignore sometimes.
Mhm.
But bringing it back, just because we are kind of talking a little bit about like your experience as a data engineer, and eventually kind of like why you left. Like what did you actually like in the data engineering world? Like what were some things you liked there?
Yeah, there are a lot of things that I liked. But let's say if I have to like pin it to like a few points, I would say like ideally, now that I have been working in the data scientist and advanced analytics space for some time, I would say like the biggest thing that I miss and I did enjoy is like having tangible outputs that I can point to, where I can say I built this. 25 people are using this.
Yeah.
Whereas like in my current role, like it's so arbitrary, like it's subjective. Like what did I build? Okay, there was analysis. I wrote a doc. Who's using it? Definitely I can quantify it in terms of revenue, but like that feeling that you get like by building something, like if you're a core engineer, I think like data engineering, like you can like build stuff with it. Like you can build data pipelines, you can build architecture, and you can develop it, and you can tell who is using it, when they're using it, where they're using it. So like you have all that information. And when it comes to like, I'm all about like career progression. When it comes to like career progression, it's somewhat easier to like justify what you did, because you can say like, I did this year, I built 3 data pipelines. There are like 100 people who are using these data pipelines. Like the impact is easy to quantify versus like some of the other data science role. So that's definitely something I really, really enjoyed. The second thing that I also enjoyed was data engineering is like software engineering. It's a little bit more on the back end. So you're like removed from like day-to-day businesses and any politics that are there. So you are actually focusing on your core work, rather than getting like kind of like clouded by all the business and all the politics and all of that. Like you are able to like put your head down and do your work in the back end. You will still have to like talk to people. Like that doesn't remove it. Like you have to understand what you're building, but you can actually sit down and do your work. So that's definitely one of the areas I miss. The salaries, obviously, I think like data engineers are getting paid really well. They weren't getting paid that well when I was a data engineer, because data engineer was such a new job family. It didn't had built that reputation that it has now. So the salary is great for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that you brought up tangible output. I feel like that's probably what most people will say when they're like, "Oh, why do you like being a data engineer?" Or usually, I talk to a lot of people. It's like, "Why'd you switch from being a data scientist to a data engineer?" I think that is often the one of the main things people say is like, "Hey, I actually when I build things, I kind of like I say I see it, but like obviously it's still code, but there's something there, right? With an analysis, you do it, and then maybe it's gone." Like, right, like maybe now it's done and you now have another analysis. Or the other way I like to think about it is like sometimes it just never ends, where it's just like when are you done? Because you can keep asking questions, someone can keep wanting to dig more into it, so you might have thought you're done and then it's like, oh no, we'd like to do more. So I imagine those are all reasons some people might switch the other direction just as much.
Yeah.
Speaking of switch, did you find that switch to DS difficult? Do you have any tips for people who maybe want to make that switch?
I would say, so just taking a step back, like before I share my journey, I think I don't know if I want to say like got lucky. Maybe that's, I think like whenever I tell this story, like people say like I am kind of like privileged because I had that. Yes, definitely. I had access to people. But I think there is something about like working smart and breaking the rules in a way. So data engineering and data scientists role are very, very different. Like there's not, compared to like data analysts and data scientists, there's very little overlap between data scientist and data engineer. So when I decided to like switch to data scientist role, for me, the inspiration came from like one of the projects that I did while I was working as a data engineer, because the director of my team was looking for some analysis, and I kind of like raised my hand, like, yes, I will do it. And I did it. And I was like, this is great. Like, this is what I want to do. Like there's like a trend you will find in my story whenever I talk about like work or transitions. Like I tried something, I liked it, and I'm like, okay, I want to do this. And I'll go for it. I'll put like all my effort into that. So after doing that project, I figured out like I want to become a data scientist, and that's the route I want to take. So then I started networking with people at Amazon. One of the biggest perks I would say is working at a big company is that there are so many different business units, there's so many different products, there's so many different teams. You don't have to leave the company to actually explore a completely new job. So I started networking with different managers, specifically people who are teams that were data science teams, but they were looking for a data engineer, because I knew that I needed to work as a data engineer for some time and get exposure to data science before I can like jump ship, because that will give me some time to get ramped up of how a data science team works. So while networking, I came across this manager who is to date my favorite manager. I told him like, this is my career goals. This is what I I'm interested in doing. I see there's an open job, data engineering job in your team. I would love to join it, but I want to work with you on my career goal to transition to data scientist role. So I would like mentorship from you and some guidance from the team, but I will deliver as a data engineer whatever you need in the initial set of months. So he was fully bought into the idea and basically brought me on the team. I did some data engineering projects on that team, and on the side, I started learning what the teams, the data scientists or research scientists at that team. Research scientists were the only job family in that team because data scientist job family back then did not exist at Amazon. Ended up learning from their work, sat in all the meetings, asked a lot of questions, learned on my own, asked a lot of questions to my manager, asked a lot of questions to my teammates, looked at their code. There were like days when I would like read their code, run the code line by line, and try to see like what exactly is this doing. So a lot of learning, and then eventually I felt comfortable to a point where I went to my manager, like I'm ready to do a project independently. Ended up doing a few projects on my own. Obviously, like learned a lot on those projects, and then data scientist job family was launched back then, and then my manager converted me, filed the HR ticket, and converted me to the data scientist role. Back then, like HR did push back, and HR was like, she does not have a data science degree, like we cannot move her. But then my manager like really fought for me, and he said that if she's able to do this job, like why do you care about the degree? Why do you care about a piece of paper? So like that worked, and they basically they transitioned me. So that was my transition. But like for anybody else who's like looking to transition, I would say like think about learning in a T-shaped form, where like T is like you have every piece of information that you can learn in that job family. For example, we're talking about data scientist role, like there is statistical learning, there's machine learning, there is within machine learning, there's like so many different things, there's experimentation. So learn about all those things, but like go deep into, pick one area and then go deep into it. So that was true for me. Like I ended up going on the experimentation space. So I learned what the data scientist, the top of the T, and then I went deep into the experimentation space. And then I built my skill set on that space. And then with different project that is outside of that niche, I ended up like learning again and like doing the project. So it was more of like a project-based learning, depending on what I'm getting introduced to or what my team is working on at that time.
Yeah. I think that's what I really enjoy about that, is that like you kind of like you did have to advocate, it sounds like, a little bit for yourself, right? Like, but you made it like very much like, look, I want to do this. Like you made it very clear with what you wanted with this future manager, which I think, when I tell people like whoever, whether it's a data analyst wanting to go to data engineering or data, engineer going to data scientist, I think probably generally the easiest way is to move laterally, but sometimes you have to kind of do that trade-off, is what I've often found. Like I've had to do that in the past, where it's like, look, I'll do all my normal work, but can I like just spend 20% of my time like learning more about data science? Was like at my first job, where I was like trying to go more of the data science route, and they like opened up that door. So oftentimes, if you're willing to ask, sometimes people will open that door. It probably is a little easier at some fangs. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like it's definitely easier. And I don't want to say easier, but it is like opportunities are there, and not everybody takes advantage of it. Like you really have to be driven to take advantage of all the opportunities, because there are like thousands of people at these fangs. And not everybody takes advantage of it. There was one thing I was going to say. I forgot. So we can move on.
Oh no, I at least kind of get where you're going. It's like, you do have to take advantage of it.
I have those moments where I would be like, I would say something, I'm like, oh God, I forgot. But on YouTube, you can never tell because I'm able to like edit it out. So.
Yes. No one sees you. No one ever sees you when you're like, starting to say something. You're like, oh, starting to say something, and you're like, repeat 3 times just to try to get back on track mentally. Yes. Yeah. Or I just sit there and pause in like one movement. I'm like, if I make it really easy for my editor, they won't be able to tell.
I think I remember. Well, I think like to your point, I just wanted to emphasize like be greedy, be very clear what you want. When you go to people
Yeah.
and you know what exactly you're looking for, it's easier for them to also help you.
Yeah.
So, and that's
Yeah.
what I currently did with my 20% project. I talked to different managers, and I told them like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. Like, can you give it to me? And some of them said no, and some of them said yes. And that's exactly the team that I ended up choosing. Like, we're very aligned on what I want to get out of that 20% project. So, yeah.
Yeah. No. So suddenly it sounds like marriage. It's like you just have to be clear sometimes on what you're. It's like what you need, and like
Yeah.
suddenly
What
things
do
are
you need?
solved.
What do you want? Tell me. Tell me what you want.
It's worse when you don't tell me. No.
And then you have to
In
play the
terms
guessing
of
game. Yeah.
yes, exactly. What was I thinking? So in terms of like skills, since
Mm.
you've seen the DE side, you've seen the DS side, maybe you've kind of seen how it kind of has changed. What do you see in terms of like the skills that DEs need versus the skills that like data scientists need? And sorry, I use DE and DS, guys, data engineering, data scientists.
Oh, you're
I
fine.
think that's just the abbreviation.
Yeah, I don't mind that. So in terms of like, I think we for DE we talked about it briefly, like a lot more cloud computing knowledge. So that has become like the part of like core skill set for data engineer. Back then, like when I learned it, like that wasn't part of the core skill set. So like that has evolved from the DE perspective. And since I have been out of the job family for so long, I don't know what else has changed. So maybe you can fill in the gap there. For data scientist role, I would say like over the years, I've seen like the data scientist job family or the data scientist job family has become like closer and closer to the PM role, whereas you're supposed to have both a product understanding and the data scientist understanding. So it's kind of like a merging between the two. And that's where the birth of like product analyst role, which is currently like adopted. I think over the recent years, it's been adopted by a lot of people. It's different from data analyst because a product
Yeah.
analyst, you're supposed to have like very good, solid understanding of the product that you're working with, and you work very closely with the product manager as well. So that's the evolution that I've seen over the years, specifically in the data scientist role. A lot more product understanding, a lot more business understanding. And yeah, there are like tons of tools that are now automated. For example, like their forecasting. Previously, like you had to write line by line code to do forecasting or do like machine learning. Now all you have to do is like figure out your feature engineering, which some tools are out there that can actually do that for you as well. So a lot of like automated tools, which means like the coding part maybe not as much, but like having understanding what to input, how to read the output, that is like a core skill that is everybody needs to kind of like get a better grasp of in the space.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. And there's some, I think, some similarities on the data engineering side. I've been thinking about this like more and more recently in terms of like what my life was like before when I again was working on like Oracle and SQL Server versus now. And there's just lots of little things that I don't think about anymore. This became apparent when I was working on a recent project with a client where they were still on SQL Server, and they referenced like, "Oh, we're almost out of memory," and I'm like, "What? Oh, yeah, you're on prem and like you have a limited amount of memory." Whereas,
Yeah.
if you're using BigQuery, Snowflake, any of the modern solutions, it's like, no, it's infinite, right? I can, I never run out of memory. So it's like this interesting convenience that you have. Or running out of compute. Like, oh, I remember when I used to have to work on SQL Server, like you had to make sure you timed your jobs to run at the right time. Because if you had two big jobs running, they'd bump into each other or lock a table or do something that you didn't want. And then you'd have to like kill one job or kill both jobs and restart and wait,
Oh my
2
God.
hours for one of them to complete.
I have nightmares from that.
Yeah.
We talked about the good parts about data engineering. Like, can we also take a moment of like talking about like things I did not enjoy? I
Sure,
would say
sure.
like the on call was brutal. Like
Okay.
when I worked as a data engineer, like I think I did not skip a Sunday evening where I actually worked and checked on all the jobs, because the teams that I was supporting at the time, they had their WBRs due Monday 12 p.m.,
Yeah.
which means
Mm.
if I didn't work Sunday night, I didn't fix all the jobs that were getting into error, my Monday morning is going to be a mess and it's going to be delayed. And then I have to send emails to like all the directors and VPs and telling them like why they don't have their data. So I worked as a data engineer 2 years and I never skipped a Sunday and I don't miss that. So I hope it's better now. Like I hope it's because we have moved to like better technologies. Like it's not as human involved as before. I don't know. You correct me.
Yeah. No. Someone actually posted here. They're like, I make a point to not take jobs that require on call. I picked a team at Facebook that I was like, look, they're most of the time if something broke, it was like, well, we can fix it tomorrow. Like it's not like it was at 4 a.m. You got to wake up and you know that was on call. Most of my on call stuff I think involved just giving people access to data. So really, what sucked is usually just you'd be like, well, my half of my week's gonna be gone because I'm gonna just be spending time dealing with all these on call tickets.
Mhm.
But it only came up I think once every 3 months or something because we had a pretty big team. So it was like, well, it's not that
That's
big of a
good.
deal. But I am sure there are teams where it's like, yeah, if you have like critical data that like especially if it's like a product that people are, you know, all eyes on currently, like they're like, we're trying to, you know, deal with growth on Reels or something. Like I'm sure there's like daily meetings that people are looking at those numbers. Like if your pipeline fails, you're probably having to fix it immediately to make sure those
Yeah.
numbers do exist.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like the solutions are good, but pipelines still fail. You know, things
Okay.
happen. Like it was so
So
funny.
nothing much has changed basically. So
Yeah, it was always funny because like sometimes like a pipeline would fail and literally we'd be like, well, it was just kind of an ethereal, like there's no real reason why, but like it just dropped somewhere. There was no
yeah.
like they'd just be like, yeah, just rerun it and you rerun it, it would work. And you're like, why? Why does it work? And like, oh, something with the underlying technology, like it just died. I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Talking about
So
things that did not go well or the downs, like there was one time I took the entire server down because I was being a smartass. I was I was building a new data pipeline, and for that data pipeline, I had to like backfill 2 years of data for 11 countries at that time that we supported. And the night before, I was working and I wrote this basically script, a cron job to like backfill the data for like 11 countries, 2 years of data.
mm.
In the morning, when I came to the office, my manager had the monitor up and he's like, "What did you do?" I was like, "I don't know. What did I do?" He's like, "We have a ticket, SEF0. You took a server down." I'm like, I just ran the backfill. I don't know what I did. So
Yes.
yeah, that was alerting. So I never ran 2 years of backfill after that.
One of the many reasons, like I have one post that I post every once in a while, and it's like 7 words data engineers hate, and backfill is one of them. And that's part of it. I think part of it is that like yeah, you don't know, especially if you don't have like a very like scaled out system. If you have one server, you might be taking it down, right? Like you pull out enough data all at once.
Yeah.
Also, just sometimes it would be really messy. Like I remember having to run like 2 years of backfilling every once in a while at Facebook, and it would just be like you could kind of click like they had a UI that you could kind of do. It'd be like, okay, yeah, run 2 years back and run all the dependencies for this job. But every once in a while, you just have like hundreds of dependencies not run. You'd have to go back and figure out which ones didn't run. Okay, let me go run them one at a time to make sure I can, you know, backfill this 2 years of data. So
I don't
it's
miss
just a
it.
pain.
I don't miss it at all. You were
so
like
so
like this conversation, I don't think I've talked about data engineering in this depth. Like this conversation is bringing up all the memories. It's a great job
yeah,
if you like it.
yes. Yeah. I think that's the thing. It's like if you like it, it's great. You learn to kind of love migrations and building pipelines, and you get used to backfilling, and it's like yeah, it's just part of the job.
Yeah.
And then you got to build pipelines, and so I think for every good, there's bad, right? Like I'm sure on
Yeah.
the data science side, do you think there are things that you're like you wish didn't exist in terms of types of work you have to do?
Yeah, oh, definitely. Before like moving on, I just want to say one thing. Like for data engineering, I think like a lot of these things that we're talking about, like they're more entry level. Like as you become senior in your role, like you're doing more data architect stuff, which is a lot more fun. So I don't think any principal data engineer is sitting and like fixing these data pipelines and stuff. So just a disclaimer for everybody who don't want you to be scared of the job family. Like it's beginner problems. entry-level problems. For the data scientist role and data analyst role, I would say the part that your question was like, what does really bother me? What things I don't
Yeah.
like? Oh my God, so many things. One is like when people don't understand what my job is. Like they think like my job is to build reports for them and dashboard. Like I don't want to use the word hate. Like I do not like it's not even my skill set. I don't want to build dashboards. And if you think my skill set is building dashboard, like then we cannot work together because you need to study my job family first before we can work. Because like that's the wrong mindset. There was one meeting where I like presented this very in-depth analysis, and there were like a bunch of charts from the analysis that I included. And like Amazon style meeting, you like write a 6-pager, you sit down, 1 hour meeting, first 20 minutes you spend reading the document, and then like the rest 40 minutes you spend discussing. So it was that type of meeting. We wrote the 6-pager, did the analysis, a lot of work went into it. And this person sitting in the meeting, no question, and he goes, can we take these charts and we turn it into a dashboard? I wanted to like stand up and scream. It's like, you did not just say that. Like, can we talk about the analysis? Like, what is this? Like, so those things that I think like those still exist. I think there has been more education on the job family, but there are still like people who don't understand how to leverage the job family fully. And then when I was new in this space, like I didn't know like what is wrong, what is right, how to push back. There were many instances where I would get emails forwarded by a PM or a manager or somebody, can you give me this data? And I would give them this data, they'll take the data and they will like present it to whoever is in that email chain thread.
Mm.
I don't know if like that's a common data engineering ask as well, but that has not gone away. But I think like as I have become more experienced, I have like gotten better at like navigating those instances, and like setting boundaries. Like you can't just forward me an email and ask me to give you a data that you can go present. Like I'm not your I don't want to use a bad word. So, I'm not your like I don't know data reporter or whatever. You're like that's
Yeah,
not my
yeah, yeah.
job. So I think like there is some element of respect that everybody who works with somebody, whether you're working with a data scientist or data analyst, like you need to respect what their role is and what you can actually ask them, but you can't ask them. Like if it's a simple report, maybe if you really want the data, maybe you can learn SQL on your own. Like there was one recently, actually, somebody reached out to me. They were like, "Can you give me this data?" I'm like, "I already have work planned out, and I don't have bandwidth today. But if you know SQL, here's a script. Go run it." And they didn't run it because they did not know I guess I don't know whatever the reason is. But yeah, like those are things that still exist in the space. But I think like I hope like down the road like there's more structure around these things, so we're not getting bombarded with these requests.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's like the one place that many data people really hope Gen AI can soon fill is all those ad hoc requests. It's just like, look, if we could just get these, ad hoc requests out and just make it, friendly. And I think the hard thing there is I have been sold the idea of language to SQL for the last decade and have yet to see it really work. So I'm just like, look, it always works nice on pretty examples, but whenever someone gets it on real data, it's just never what I want. But in terms of Gen AI and like where you see it kind of fitting, do you see a way that engineers, data scientists should be approaching it?
I think everybody should be approaching it because I see it as a productivity tool. And especially if your company is using it, has adopted it, um, then like, why are you not using it? For example, like recently I I had to write this paper where I had to like do some research on like customer behavior, on user behavior. And I can do the research on my own, or I can like see what other teams have done. And I found this deck, basically Google Slides deck, and it was like full of research that I needed to include in my paper. What I ended up doing is like there is a Gemini integration in the slides. I basically asked Gemini to like summarize that deck for me. And then I asked it to create bullet points. It literally did an amazing job, like summarizing the entire 20-page deck into like few bullet points And that took me 2 seconds. If I were to like spend time on that deck on my own, it would have taken me at least like 1 to 2 hours. Of course, like AI is not there, like there's hallucination. So you like always have to like verify what you get from it. But I was able to like get my data in like 2 minutes versus like spending 1 hour. Another instance where I had to write a paper where my manager reached out and they're like, this is high priority. Like, can we write this proposal? And we need to like send it because if we don't send it now, we're going to have like some issue. I opened Google Word doc. I gave some bullet points to Gemini and I said like, can you write this doc for me? And it created a structure. Sometimes like the hardest part is like starting like your document,
Yeah.
like when you open a blank page of document, you don't know where to start.
Yeah.
And it gave me a structure. It gave me some wording, which I don't like the wording of any of the Gen AI tools, right? Like it doesn't sound very human-like. It sounds like very robotic. But it did give me a structure and I ended up just filling it out. And I was able to like write that paper, start and finish that paper like within 2 days. And I sent it out yesterday and I was like, whoa. Anyways, and then there's like coding, like why not just if you have a bug, why not just ask Gen AI to do it? Anyways, like it's not, as you said like before, like Gen AI is not perfect, but in some instances, like it is able to help you be more productive in your day-to-day job. Whether you are in data science, whether you're in product management, whatever role and job family you are in, if your company has adopted and you're allowed to use it on your work stuff, why not use it? So.
Yeah. I will say that I like that way you said it. Like sometimes it's just helpful getting started. I definitely have used it for plenty of outlines where I'm like, I don't even know, where do I start? What topic should I cover? In this,
just staring at the
so
blank doc is just like sometimes it's just so intimidating. So I think it just helps to have something on the paper.
Yes, but on the flip side, like you said, I think it's often very sterilized and very like robotic sounding. So and I think that's, at least for now, the one place that I've found that people will have an advantage is like, especially with writing and videos, is people care about stories to a degree. So the more you can kind of have a story connected to it and like your personal aspect. But we'll see. I'm never gonna count any technology out.
Yeah, I mean, like we can talk about content creation. Like anybody can write any data engineering or data science script and like create a video. Just talk through the script, but that's not why people follow you or follow me. People want to hear our like personal opinion, our perspective. They want to see our personality. They want to hear from our experiences and learn from our experiences. So I guess like Gen AI is not going to take over content creators. Like people follow you for you. People don't follow you, I guess, like for both. People follow you for you and what you have to say. So
yeah. No. Let's see. We want to be mindful of time. We have like 10 minutes here. Let's see. I'll just go here. How, like in terms of like technology, because there is so much that changes. How do you kind of keep up with it all?
So let's there's so much going on. First of all, I have to keep up with things at my day job, and then I have to keep up with things outside for content creation purposes. And then I have to keep up with things with things like that I'm just like curious about. So at work, I guess like another perk of like working at a big company is that there are like so many groups, technical and non-technical groups, that are hosting different events, hosting different workshops. So I'm like subscribed to those groups, and they do like virtual workshops. And for example, there is like a A/B testing group that only talks about A/B testing, and they talk about like the new technologies, the new way of like looking at experiments, designing experiments, analyzing experiments, and so on. And it's always just shows up on my calendar because I'm subscribed to it. Then there are newsletters. Like I can subscribe to newsletter within my company to different groups, and they send out like monthly or quarterly newsletter that I can just sit down and read. And then obviously like with my day-to-day job, like I have to do some research on my own to like figure out what new is happening in the industry. Some trainings are actually obviously required because you have to like stay on top of what is happening in the latest. So like it's like voluntary learning from like these affinity groups, and then required learning. So I guess like that's the two ways I stay on top of new things, new technologies at my day-to-day job. Outside of my job, like for content creation, like I consume a lot of social media content. Like this is gonna sound bad, but like I consume a lot of social media content, and I don't know if like that's the right outlet to like follow news, but like all the AI news, I get it from social media before I can like actually see it on the regular media
Mhm.
outlet. Uh, and then I also, as I said, I also have a team. So sometimes they will like share articles with me, and they were like, "Hey, have you read about this?" Or, for example, I was looking more into like AI. I'm starting an AI bloopers series where I want to talk about like some AI mistakes that AI has made. And this Netflix documentary called "Who," something with Jennifer. Who killed Jennifer?
Yeah.
I don't know if you watched it,
I
but
think I remember hearing about this, or I don't remember what part they did where like the editors kind of did something where it was like
yeah,
they went
they
back and they're like, this
basically
was clearly faked.
Yeah, so
Or
they
something.
basically generated an image with AI of this person named Jennifer, having a good time, having a, like partying and whatever. And they included that in the documentary. And when you like zoom into the picture, like you can clearly see like her fingers are distorted, her like hands are
Mm,
distorted, and people like figured out, Reddit users figured it out after like as soon as that documentary
it's
went
always
live,
Reddit.
that like it's like AI generated. So that created a lot of controversy. So like that I've learned about like from one of the people in my team who also
Mm,
works in the data science space. But yeah, like social media for my team, and then from friends. Sometimes like my friends share articles and so on. And then there are like so many newsletters. I know you have one like where you share like all about data engineering. Then there's a newsletter TLDR, like Morning Brew. There's a bunch of AI newsletters that I'm like signed up to. So like I read through those basically. Not all of them. I wouldn't say like I read every newsletter. Like anything that sparked my interest, like I'll read it to see what's happening, the latest and greatest. Yeah, I know I gave a very long answer. So how do
no,
you
no,
keep
no,
up?
it's good. It's perfect. I mean, I think a lot of it is again through reading newsletters, through doing projects. I think that's one of the nice things about consulting is you are constantly figuring out where people are really at, right? Because
Mhm.
there's what people say in you know the news and things like that, and then there's the reality. And the reality is most people's data is still a mess, right? Like everyone's still figuring things out. Like people are still trying to figure out data science and trying to answer how many customers they have. Uh, and then they're just trying to stick new tools on top of that. So everyone's trying to use Databricks and Snowflake or BigQuery.
Mhm.
But you know, I think that's generally how. Only because I thought it was funny. So you want to cover bloopers from AI? Are you allowed to cover bloopers from Google?
Wait, I can't hear you. What did you say?
Is that serious or is that should I?
Wait, you're breaking out. I can't hear you.
All right. I'll take a question from the
Okay.
audience. We've
Okay.
got 5 minutes left. Yeah. So in terms of someone's asking in terms of sufficient knowledge to get an entry level job as a data engineer, do you have any tips on like what people should know and like what you think is enough?
You know, Ben, actually, you might be a better person to answer this because I've been out of the data engineering job family for so long. So why not you answer
Yeah.
this?
That's fine. I have mixed. I don't think this is how the question means to come off, but whenever I get a lot of this style question, like what's the minimum? I don't think you mean to make it sound like what's the least that I have to know before I can get a data engineering job. My guess is
Mhm.
the question is when can I start applying? Or at least that's how I translate it.
Mhm.
I think if you want to start applying, as long as you have a good foundation in SQL, some programming language, generally Python is, fine. I started in Java, so I always have a soft spot there, but I think Python is fine. And you have a good understanding of like what a data pipeline is, how it operates, how to build one, what are the things you should consider when building one, and then data warehousing and data modeling, you're generally good enough to pass a baseline interview because that's generally what you're going to get asked. At Facebook, I've done Facebook, I've done Amazon, I haven't done Netflix or Google's interview for data engineering, but what I usually get asked is some Python questions, some SQL questions, some data modeling question of some kind, and then maybe a design question on like data pipelines. So as long as you can get through those, you're usually pretty good. And in terms of like SQL, you should generally be able to do things like self-join and know how to use like a self-join instead of like a lag and a lead or row number. You should be able to do like, use a CTE and do more complicated joins and things of that nature. And then Python, as long as you can usually do medium leak code questions, you can pass like FANG level interviews. I don't know what non-FANGs ask these days, but that's usually how I feel. Cool.
Amazing.
No thoughts at all. You're like, I'm data science. I don't
I
do
think
BA anymore.
I think you covered it all. Like you covered it all.
Yes. Yeah.
So.
And now
Can I
I
ask?
feel like I'm
I
getting.
have a question for you.
Yes.
How
please.
much do data engineers make? What's like an
Where?
average salary?
At
Like
what
your
company?
location.
Oh, in Denver? I mean, in Denver.
Meta. Or
Oh,
Denver.
Meta?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, at Meta, I think if you're somewhere like a junior data engineer, or maybe like your IC3 is usually, I think, kind of your junior, you'll probably start somewhere in like the 200 some range, maybe like right at like 200. At like IC4, it goes to about 300. I just heard someone who was in IC5 get a 400K offer at Meta. So that's usually kind of the breakdown. It's a little bit less than usually software engineers. So I think a software engineer at IC5 probably is making like half a mil, probably, maybe more, maybe less. But I think the interesting thing that I also see is like at a certain point, unless you plan to be IC7 and like you really have to plan to be like a principal, right? You don't fall there on accident. I think most people get to IC5, which for most people that's just senior. So most people kind of call that a terminal role, where it's like you don't like if you go higher, it's hard. It's like a lot harder, right? Like you could just chill at IC5, which is what a lot of people like to do. They're like, I'm just going to rest here and make money and not have to deal with responsibility. But that's generally the breakdown, at least at Facebook.
No, that's solid pay. Like way better.
Yeah.
I don't want to say way better than data scientists, but data scientists is a lot of learning and it's constant learning. I'm sure but data engineering is the same too. But like that's a solid pay.
Yeah, and I think it was about the same at Facebook for data scientists. I don't think it was too different, if I recall, because one of the nice things at Facebook is that, well, I don't know if they're going to continue Workplace anymore. They've gotten rid of Workplace, but we had Workplace, which is, they say it's like Slack. To me, it's different than Slack. It's more like a Facebook for work. We had a group where people would literally post their letters of like during promotions and review time. They promote.
I have heard about it.
Letter. Yeah. So you would know exactly, like you'd be like, oh, this person got rated whatever, meets all expectations. They got whatever, a 5% raise this time around. This is how many stock refreshers they got. This is how much they're making in total. So you could literally go through and it was all very like, you'd be like, yeah, it all equals out, right? Like everyone's is about the same. If they got they got a promotion that or a raise that makes sense, etc. So
yeah, no, that's great. One of my friends who works at Meta, she showed me that group and I was like shocked to see how transparent people are. Like that's crazy. I wish like every company was like that.
Yeah, I think it was one of the nice things. Like obviously Facebook tries to be as transparent as they can be. Sometimes it bites them, right? I remember especially during, I think, COVID, people would just start leaking our weekly town hall with Mark, and people would be like, oh, this is what's happening at Facebook. Someone leaked this conversation. So it was like you can only be so transparent, I guess, sometimes. But yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions? Because we have no minutes left now.
Yeah. Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Can I ask, what do you do outside of when you are not working? What do you do?
I mean, I do a lot of content creation, and but if I'm not doing that, like I'm in Denver, so I'm trying to do I did a hike, I want to say last week. So we'll try to do some hikes. We're trying to hit some more what Denverites call 14ers, which Seattle only I think has the one, which is Mount Rainier. I don't think Mount St. Helens is technically 14,000 feet anymore. I think it's like 9,000. So there's like 50 of them here, 50 plus in Denver. So everyone's like, well, let's go try to climb all the mountains above 40,000 feet. So we would try to do a few of those a summer, at least one or two. Yeah. So hit some hikes, create content,
Nice.
Newly married. So that kind of stuff as well.
As in weeks, months?
About to be a year.
A year. Wow.
So,
That is still newly married.
Exactly.
So
So, and bought a house, so figuring out like what that's like and
oh
taking
my
care of
God. Do you have
that.
a
And
yard?
a little one. I mean, it's not. I think this is a little under. I think it's like close to a quarter of an acre, so it's not huge, but
Yeah.
it's not nothing. So we're trying
You
to
know,
grow some tomatoes and some other things.
oh,
Go ahead.
nice. Like it's good that if you're into gardening, like I have a yard, front yard and backyard. It's the owner before us, like she took such a great care, and I'm like horrible and I don't even have time. So it's always a struggle for me. Like I love that we bought a house, but I don't love that I have to maintain it. Like it's so much work. But if you're growing
Yeah,
tomatoes, that means you're into it. So
yeah. We're trying. We'll see.
yeah.
And yes, it is. It's a lot of work. We're trying to figure out like, okay, what do we outsource here? Because it's like even weeding. I feel like I every day I try to do like 30 minutes to an hour, and it's like it's not
Oh,
enough. It's just not
it's
enough
so much
to
work.
fight
Don't
all
even
the
get
weeds.
me started. Don't even get me started. I just recently paid somebody $600 to like take out all my weed, my weed, my weed in my garden. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's
It's
you need to outsource it. It's so much work,
yes,
especially if you're busy.
but yeah, but it's fun. But yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't have any more questions. I want to be mindful of your time. I know we wanted to keep this an hour, so I
Cool.
appreciate your time in this. This was great. It was great. Hopefully, you didn't have too much PTSD coming back and thinking about data engineering too much.
No, it
But
was
yeah,
good.
thanks
It
so
was
much.
good because like I was like, okay, I don't miss it. So,
Oh no. Well,
so
no, I'm glad. I'm glad.
yeah, yeah.
Cool.
No, it was great.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for having me. As I said, like before we started, like I don't do lives, but like this was so much fun. Thank you for making it so engaging, and thank you to everybody like who asked great questions. Yeah, it's been great. Love to be here.
Yeah. 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 Thank you again. And thanks everyone for joining. So
All
cool.
right,
I'm gonna hit end
bye.
stream. Bye.